Hello and welcome back to the A4 Skyhawk. I'm taking an extended break from the F-18 for a while because I've been really focused on it lately, and I'm kind of tired of messing around with that campaign that I've been working on. So we're gonna play around with the A4 for a while, just to kind of have some fun. You saw my last video where I was kind of requesting some assistance with figuring out how to land in this aircraft. I personally have figured out a couple of little tips and tricks on trying to land on the carrier. I'm still not consistent. I'm still having a little bit of a hard time controlling the aircraft, but I'm better than I was. So we're going to go ahead and run through this real quick, just to kind of go over some of the things that I've learned as I've done this, and hopefully we can get ourselves down on the carrier and make this work. So the first thing I always do is I get the APC auto throttle kind of thingy figured out, and then obviously in real world situations, you're not going to just pop in this close to the thing. So you'd have all of this stuff set up. It's one of the issues that I have with the carrier practice sometimes, is that you kind of have to rush through your initial setup because you're right there at the carrier, and it kind of rushes you through that initial setting. I mean, I guess you could do some active pause or whatever and get everything set up, but I always forget to do that. But anyways, we're going to try to get to the right of the carrier, get ourselves to 800 foot AGL, and then get ourselves on the BRC heading for this mission, which seems to be about 360. So we're going to go ahead and do that. As soon as we're level, as soon as we're more or less level, okay, it's not wanting to level out. There we go. I go ahead and pop the auto throttle on, and then once I look back and I can't see the carrier anymore, you're supposed to do a 45-degree turn, but I find 45 degrees is a little bit much. So I just try to put it somewhere past that what I believe to be the 30-degree marker. And then the scan for this aircraft is a little bit different because it's all steam gauges, so as soon as we hit right around the 220 mark, I drop my gear and my flaps. When I'm using the auto throttle, I do not bother with the speed brake because it just causes so much shaking with the aircraft that I can't see what's going on. So, all right, we're back on our reciprocal heading here. Going to trim out to try to nullify a lot of the excessive descent. We need to get ourselves down to 600. I was not very good at controlling my altitude during this process, so there's always that. But we're going to try to keep ourselves on the proper heading. We're going to let the auto throttle do all the work with that. Slowly bringing ourselves to try to get down to 600 before we start our turn, but that may not be feasible. I'm having a hard time judging what the actual BRC of the carrier is because the angled deck makes it hard, and because I'm not able to bring up my comm menu. I don't know why. It just will not come up. I can bring it up on the ground, but I'm not able to bring it up on... Whoa! Oh! Speed brake. Speed brake. Crap. Accidentally pressed the speed brake. So, yeah, there's that. So we're far enough now that we're going to go ahead and start our 20-degree turn. I'm assuming that each of these tick marks is about 10 degrees. So it's supposed to be a 22-degree turn. That's kind of hard to judge, so I just kind of do my best as we're going through and doing this. And then, as always, I'm going to try to make sure I wait until we get to the 90-degree mark. Looks like this might actually be kind of okay. A little bit high. I found that you have to do a lot more stick work with this aircraft because the pitch trim adjustments on the intervals on the pitch trim adjustment on this aircraft are just really high. So once I can see the aircraft, I go ahead and max out my seat position to the highest position it can be. Feels like we're a little bit low, but it gets really hard to tell. Now, from the highest seat position, I've found that if you put the carrier at the top of your heads-up display, once you're actually on the descent path, once you're on a glide slope, it generally keeps you right where you want to be. So we're a little bit low. As we start approaching where the ball's going to be centered, start pulling up. If you're on the ball, you generally want to have it looking pretty much like this, where the top of the HUD is right there. Or the top of that, where you're basically centering the landing area in the little circle here. And then ideally catch the wire. We did not. Pull up and try again. Turn a little bit more shallow because we don't have the speed that we had at the initial bit of a turn, at the initial turn there. Go ahead and get the auto throttle turned back on. Get the hook back down. Oh. And then we just need to get ourselves turned back around to the reciprocal heading again. We'll give this another shot. That's the general idea. Obviously, we don't have some of the things that make landing easier, like the velocity vector to help you know exactly where you're pointing. Some of that kind of stuff. So we're really high. I'm going to expedite our descent back down to 600-ish. Okay, we can see the round down. We're going to start our 20-degree turn, and hopefully this time it goes a little bit better. Try to really hold that descent rate to less than 500 feet per minute. That seems to give me a pretty decent altitude once we get around. I really need to change the time of day for this mission, though. Like, whoever thought that carrier practice at sunset, at dusk, where there's shadows and everything, is, I don't know who thought that was a good idea. Okay. I'm going to try to wait until we're a little bit more... Overshot it a little bit. The only thing about this cockpit is that it's very difficult to see. Alright, so we got on the carrier, but like... that was a really crap landing, so we're going to try that one more time. See if I can do a little bit better job of managing my altitude. That seems to be the hardest part for me. Get that APC charging so it's ready to go once we're there. Try this again. That throttle go way too fast. So a big part of the difficulty of this is obviously just the fact that we're having to use steam gauges for this. So the scan that you would normally have, being able to just continue looking straight out the front of the aircraft and have all of the information that you need, obviously is not existent in this one. So you just have to get used to going back to the old school way of, you know, throttle wasn't high enough. Getting back to the old school way of actually, you know, looking around at the gauges and stuff to see all of the information that you need. It's ever so slightly difficult. Just get that hook down, because I almost forget to do that. Okay. I don't see the carrier anymore, so we're going to go ahead and start turning. I try to be very gentle, especially when we have the APC on, because it still takes it a second to kind of respond. We are climbing, so I'm going to compensate a little bit by descending somewhat. Once we hit 220, I start bringing the flaps down so that we don't descend too far. We need the extra lift from the flaps. Once we start getting closer to the reciprocal heading, we'll level off. Okay, pull up, get some trim going. We went way too low. This is the part that's difficult. It's getting leveled off at 600 feet. Come on. Come on. Get up there. Don't. I really wish the throttle responded a little bit faster than it does. Because keeping this thing at the altitude it needs to be requires some pretty extreme angle of attack, which slows you down a lot. Now, I know that's what the speed brake thing is supposed to be for. That's why you're supposed to have the speed brake out, is that it keeps the throttle high, which helps reduce the response time. But you see how this is shaking already? If I have the speed brake out, it shakes so bad that it's unflyable for me. Okay, we're going to start our 20-degree turn. Add a couple of notches of pitch trim just to add a couple more, just to keep that descent rate not ridiculous. So you're constantly having to fight the throttle because you make turning too fast. You make corrections, and then the throttle has to adjust to maintain the speed that you're supposed to be. And by the time it adjusts, the adjustments that by the time the throttle fixes itself, the adjustment that you made is no longer correct based off of the throttle setting that you have. So there's a lot of back and forth playing around with your attitude to keep up with the pitch and keep up with the thrust. Now, the documentation for this says that you're supposed to remain at 600 foot until you get all the way around. I've had some people giving me some information about 400 feet once you cross the wake and stuff like that. I mean, maybe, I don't know. The documentation that comes with the aircraft seems to indicate that you're supposed to stay at 600 feet until you get around. Come on, down we go, down we go. All right. So, you know, it kind of works. Not really. If we look at the pattern here, you're technically supposed to open the speed brake as you go into the turn, but the vibration is just... The vibration and the braking is just really intense. And then, you know, once you get it right around... It says 225, but right around 220, because that's the mark that's on here. I go ahead and put my gear and all that stuff down. You stay at 600 foot. It says 600 foot here as you're going into the turn, right? And it seems like you're supposed to, yeah, intercept the glide slope. So you're basically supposed to maintain 600 foot all the way around the curve, level out, and then you start your descent once you're on the glide slope and you start going down. So, you know, that's technically what you're supposed to do. We'll try this one more time just to see if maybe the third time is obviously every time you do it, it should get a little bit better as you get the muscle memory down and all that. But these older aircraft are much harder to fly, so you know it requires a lot of practice. So we're gonna go ahead and do this. Get ourselves on the BRC heading again. So visually, to me, it seems like... Actually, you know what we're going to do? Let's take a second and get out of this. We'll go back here. We'll go into the mission editor. We'll open up the... Let's see... I got to remember where it is. Saved games, DCS, mods... Aircraft, Skyhawk, missions, quick start, and then where's the case one? This one here. Open up that. I'm going to change the time of day because it seems like, what time do they make? Yeah, 19. Like whose brilliant idea was that? Let's make it 12 noon. See if that's a little better, because like it's really hard to see anything, and when you're trying to practice this, you don't need any visual glitches or visual things getting in your way and making this even harder. So let's see if this makes it a little bit easier, because all those shadows and everything, like, yeah, you should be able to overcome that, but not when you're trying to practice. Not when you're trying to practice. That should not be something you have to worry about. Okay, get that hook down. Always forget that. Yeah, it'd be nice if I could do the comms, but for whatever reason, once I get in the air, the comms just will not turn on. Get that auto throttle turned on so I don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm trying to level out the flight here. Alright, I don't see anything there, so let's go ahead and start our turn to the left. Trying to minimize my altitude loss. We're going to go ahead and start adding some flaps. Ourselves all the way around to south, which I believe is the reciprocal heading. It's kind of hard to tell. Get the throttle to cooperate. Come on. Get us back up to 600, please. Stay up at 600, please. Come on. Come on. Alright. Seem to be more or less okay. So yeah, from the documentation that we have, it seems like the pattern wants us to stay at 600 feet. So maybe there's real A4 pilots who are telling us that it's different, but based off of the documentation that I have, we should technically be, you know, hanging out on this until we get to 600 feet. And then once we get to where the glide slope is, yeah, it doesn't seem like, oh, because I drifted off to the left. we're gonna go ahead and start our turn now. I'm gonna try my best to keep us right around 600 feet as we make the turn. I would really like it if the aircraft would stabilize itself, but it almost never does. So as long as we can keep it like kind of sitting right here, we should be okay. I'm going to shallow out our turn a little bit. We are definitely not quite there yet. Try to keep it. Come on, stay up. Okay. Down you go, down you go. Oh, I was actually pretty... the obstructions from the cockpit just make this very difficult. Okay, but ideally... bring it back down a little bit. Bring it back down a little bit. Back, right. A little too much. A little too much. Keep it right there in the center. Then we're going to have to pull up a little bit. All right, that got it done. All right, you know, it's obviously not the prettiest thing in the world, but keep in mind, I've only been flying this a little bit, so that's my excuse. And then these aircraft are just much harder to fly than like a Hornet. They don't have the flight control systems to help out with that. So you're having to manually do everything. I don't have the same visual indication, so I'm having to do everything from visual reference. And then obviously this has the F-14 canopy bow problem with the big massive crap in the middle. So those are my excuses, and I'm sticking with it. Anyways, hopefully some of that will help. I know I don't execute it the best because I'm still practicing with the aircraft, but I think the concepts are solid. I definitely am seeing that staying at 600 feet until you get around makes it much easier to get on the glide slope, so follow the documentation. I know there's going to be people out there who disagree. I'm going to do what the developers of the aircraft told me you should be doing, and proof of that is right there. They have you at 600 feet all the way around until you start descending. So try to make sure you do that. I'll continue practicing things. I'll continue making videos for the carrier recovery. As far as I'm concerned, I don't want to start working on anything else until I feel like I'm in control of the aircraft. So working on bombing and doing all that other cool stuff, that's the reward I get for actually learning how to fly the plane. So we'll get to that later. But anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Click the like button, subscribe to help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Join as a member for early access to videos, among other perks, or you can just leave YouTube's version of a tip with the thanks button. Also have a PayPal link if you prefer to go outside of the YouTube economy to do it that way. Links in the description below. So again, thank you very much for your time. Be sure to come back for the next video, and I'll see you then.